All right, now House Republican leaders told right-wing interest groups to take a hike on Thursday, passing a budget compromise on a bipartisan vote of 332 to 94. So this bill gives a partial break from across-the-board sequester cuts, as well as relief for doctors funded by Medicare. But conservative activist groups slammed this measure, calling the savings phony. And here's a look at John Boehner pushing back on that statement.
You know, I came here to fight for a smaller, less costly, more accountable federal government. And this budget agreement takes giant steps in the right direction. It's not everything I wanted. But when groups come out and criticize an agreement that they've never seen, you begin to wonder just how credible those actions are.
And here's what Paul Ryan had to say in the hallways of the Capitol.
We've been at each other's throats for a long time. Look, I was part of the last presidential election. We tried defeating this president. I wish we would have. Elections have consequences, Mr. Speaker. And I fundamentally believe, this is just my personal opinion, I know it's a slightly partisan thing to say, to really do what we think needs to be done, we're going to have to win some elections. And in the meantime, let's try and make this divided government work.
But it's probably Democrat Nancy Pelosi that had the quote of the day yesterday. She told House Democratic members at a meeting to, quote, embrace the suck, and said that we, quote, need to get this off the table so we can go forward. So, Zach, I guess we're all just here to embrace the suck. So tell us more about this budget deal.
I mean, that really feels like how Washington has been for the last, 3 years. You know, if you're going to get interested in politics, you do have to embrace the suck. The basic deal here is it reduces the deficit by, a few billion dollars. I think it's $23 billion, which means that the government is still running basically the same deficit it was running last year. Some of the completely intentionally irrational cuts to federal spending that come under sequestration, under the sequester, have been rerouted through pension programs and other hits to federal workers. So federal workers basically won't get paid as well next year, and that's where this budget savings comes from. And the sequester ends up, a lot of that money goes to the military. About half of it goes to non-military spending. It doesn't really deal with the deficit in any broad strokes, any significant measure, which is why Republicans are defending themselves from these attacks from the sort of more radical right-wing groups. Democrats don't really like it because they think the sequester is pretty bad, and most of the sequester is still in place. It's clearly hurting economic growth. There's nothing in there to extend unemployment benefits for people who are about to lose them. 1.3 million people are about to lose unemployment insurance at the end of the year. That's going to be really bad for the economy, particularly at a time when there are 4 people searching for a job for every job opening. That seems particularly cruel to Democrats. That's not even part of the deal. And what's more, there's going to be another standoff in 3 to 6 months when the United States government hits the debt ceiling, when all of this spending that was just approved by both parties comes up against this arbitrary deadline. And Republicans will almost certainly say, well, look, if you want to have the debt ceiling raised, we have to get some more spending cuts. And I think there's a reason why Paul Ryan didn't try to get that dealt with as part of this deal, because he knows in a few months he can hold that hostage again. And the consequence of doing that again is less credibility for the United States government in international finance, and the risk of panicking creditors and sparking a financial crisis.